Good afternoon and welcome to Valley News. Now I'm Adam Shalafu. In just a few minutes, North Dakota State will take the podium. Tim Polasek answering questions from the local media ahead of NDSU's big game against North Dakota, a battle between the Bison and the Fighting Hawks in the Fargodome this Saturday. Stand by, and once the press conference begins at 1:30, we will bring you live coverage.
All right, good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing okay. Last week, obviously, the production and the execution was one of those rare times where equally matches the numbers and the facts of the game were that we were ready for the challenge and we started fast. I mean, that's the thing that I was most pleased with. You know, pregame all the way to starting in the morning with breakfast. You know, I just thought the guys are really starting to understand eliminating distractions, honing in on the details of the plan, and they went out there and did that. Offensively, you know, we had 5 trips in the gold zone, but one was a victory knee, so we were 4 for 4 on touchdowns, 77% on third down, 10 of 13, and we had 5 explosive plays. Defensively, the first down production, 60% win rate, I think led to 73% win rate on third down, which is really, really critical for us. Right now, we have 5 more games before we get to a bye week. So it's important that we embrace the grind and continue to love the process and being around each other. I think, you know, the reason I bring that up is if we can recognize as a football team that we practiced with the edge that we had last week, I think reaching that full potential can be much more attainable with that in mind. We will compete and improve and be tough daily so that we have a chance to maximize this week's opportunity to be 1-0. I think getting right to UND, obviously it's a big week for several reasons. I think one is that we get to defend the Dome. You know, we get to play a game with our community, with our student body, with our fans, and we need Bison Nation to show up this week. I know the game's a sellout, but, you know, we need them at peak form at 2 o'clock or 2:30, and I'd like to see on every snap our fans clapping, constantly clapping, because their snap count is a clap cadence, and I think that could be a big issue. Home field advantage is a critical deal for us moving forward this season, and I can't wait to see our readiness in the Dome on Saturday. The second thing would be is it's a conference opponent. It's another opportunity to go 1-0. And then the third reason it's a big game is that the opponent happens to be from our home state of North Dakota, in which we share a storied history with. They have a bye week coming up next week, so I think all their chips will be on the table, and their focus will solely be on us like ours will be on them. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
For your defensive guys, how important was it to have a showing like they had on Saturday, you know, as far as going ahead in conference play goes to really shut down Illinois State? Kind of how important do you think that was for the defensive side of the ball especially?
You know, it's funny. I probably have mixed feelings on that question. I think confidence and playing with confidence is so critical, playing fast and all those things. To post some numbers, does that help, right? Maybe. I don't think we ever had a lack of confidence. I do think some of the things that we did from a personnel standpoint helped. And then I think, obviously, paying attention to the details within the game plan that the defensive coaches laid out, but more importantly, taking and transferring individual work, technique, and fundamentals and applying it on the tape. And so all those things I think Ross brought up 2 weeks ago, you know, when I went off on 4 or 5 different things, well, we just happened to focus on those 4 or 5 things and just did them better. And so hopefully moving forward, they just understand that the impact of practice. The week of practice last week was much different. And I'm much more concerned about that than I am on Saturday's performance.
How much do you use I guess obviously you're watching last year's tape because of the personnel crossover and stuff, but even last year's result, I'm not sure these guys need more of a chip on the shoulder, but that did not go the way that it was planned. How much is that kind of out of your mind, or how much do you got to use it?
Yeah, last year's game, obviously I wasn't here, so it was one of the first things I wanted to watch. And I do remember paying attention to it while the game was going on. I think last year's game is really interesting. It's truly a game that represents football and how fast things can turn on you. An opening kick, a punt block. I thought from the standpoint of game flow, their special teams disrupted everything. And, they were able to captivate the control of the game through special teams. We have to be much better. That challenge has been laid down. I mean, to me, that was not up to the standard of North Dakota State football. In the other areas, it kind of looked very similar to a normal football game. But those two plays kind of really elevated North Dakota's opportunity to win that game last year. I do, and I will take a couple questions on last year, but I'm not here to talk about last year. I'm here to talk about what's going on right now.
Can you contrast this game in 2015 when you're all coordinators, non-conference, compared to now?
Yeah, I told the guys, and there's two ways to approach a rivalry, right? Make it this humongous big deal and get away from your routines and get away from your normal process of the things you value, or, you treat it like any other big game. And for NDSU, every game is big. If we don't play perfect, everybody writes about it. If we play really, really good, everybody tells us how, we just can't get caught up in those things. But what I will tell you from a personal standpoint is my bones were trembling that morning. And I woke up and okay, this is different. And so it does mean a lot, and we're going to be ready to go. And our kids, I told them that we have to wake up Saturday with pure joy and excitement in our hearts, ready to play. That's how hard we're going to prepare, is that we're Saturday's fun. And that's the objective going into this whole thing.
Coach, when you have, Brown breaking tackles like he has been, how much of it is that as a tone setter for this offense to, play with more physicality and set the tone early?
Yeah, I was never here with Hunter Lupke, and I would never claim any credit or any of that. I mean, I have a hard time retweeting stuff, because I wasn't part of his recruiting, but he is a Bison. We're all Bison. But I remember some of those times that Coach Roll would get him going, and just, that is powerful. I mean, the offensive line now might just do just a little bit better. The tight ends might block just a little bit harder because this guy's one tackle away from breaking it. And anytime a guy is running that hard, and then I'll go a step further, that group has really done a good job of establishing energy and enthusiasm in practice. And we've always talked about that here. And so Marty's running tough right now. We got to get Marty to break one. I mean, all these real quality runs, we got to get Marty now to spring one.
Is Truman the prototypical Bison fullback, or is he more athletic than we know?
Good question. The prototypical fullbacks, when you say that, like in my mind immediately goes to Grothman and Lee Vandal. We're just not running that many plays anymore where it's just breaking equipment and a willingness to break equipment to sacrifice. You got to remember a guy like Lee Vandal had to have somebody hold his head up on the bus trip, on the plane flight back from Eastern Washington, because his career was done. I mean, he was getting constant stingers, but he laid it on the line for the Bison all those years. And so when I think about like a true hammerhead fullback, no, I think Truman provides more than that. He's a better cutoff blocker. He's a better swiper. He can give you something as far as a pass receiver. And that's really moving forward. That's what we want to have out of that position. Andrew Bonnet, is he a true Bison fullback, or is he just a crew chief? He was a guy that could do a lot of things. And so Grothman and Vandal mean so much to me that that's kind of what I think about when I think fullbacks. But those guys are all tough and physical in that room right now.
Any difference in having a middle linebacker go the entire game instead of rotating?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. I didn't ask Grant. I've never asked Grant that question. He very rarely came off the field. I think part of, like, football, offensive linemen, how often have you just come out and just run the ball at will? It's not the case. You can just see, okay, it's going okay, and then it gets better. O-linemen need to see multiple pitchers in order to capitalize on timing and rhythm of double teams. I would think it's the same for a linebacker, seeing pitchers and being able to be better as the game goes on. I haven't given that much thought at all, Jeff. That's a good question. I'm not saying I'm stumped by it, but we played pretty well last week.
What's weird Availability this week.
Right now, he went through the walkthrough last night. He didn't move around. I think he's probably in that questionable stage.
Some time about injuries. Bo Johnson.
Bo Johnson will be out this week. We're hoping it's an ankle sprain. That's not one of these extended deals.
Who else got hurt on that play?
Cade's out. Cade, same injury. You know, with the ankle injury, whether it's a high ankle in that serious category compared to an ankle sprain, you always kind of learn more in that second week.
Did Jalen Duffy come out of the game with something?
Yeah, Jalen, we thought, you know, it could have been a little more severe than it was. And so I'd put him at questionable as well, but, you know, really a knock on the elbow, but nothing broke.
Do you kind of, to get Silas rocking and rolling with Kate down, or does Braylon being available sort of make your numbers at that spot okay?
No, I mean, with Braylon being back, that changes a lot of things. You know, because now you're not having to protect, you know, some guys' repetitions count-wise. I mean, as long as we have 5 healthy receivers, we could just not even pay any attention to it, and we could just go. You know, but when you start to get to where you're 3 or 4 that are out there all the time, you do want to protect those guys in a repetition standpoint. Silas was out last week with illness, and so he's got to get caught back up. But he keeps pushing forward, and we're expecting big things from him at some point.
What do you see when you see UND's running game? I think they got 3 backs that are pretty productive.
Yeah, 3 backs that are for over their career are somewhere in the 6-yard range, right? They use all 3. You know, Sawyer I recruited really hard, like both of those kids. Tough, gritty guys. Run hard. You know, I think they're doing a really good job. I will say this for them. Their offensive coordinator has done a really good job with a first-year starting quarterback, keeping it in his wheelhouse, allowing him to make some plays with his feet. And then their run game, you know, because they were supposedly young in the O-line, just like somebody else I know. But, you know, they're doing some really nice things, just keeping it pretty simple and letting those guys block, and those guys run hard.
Kind of the run game, is it kind of been harder to keep Cody and Enoch off the field kind of the way they played last week?
Cody. Oh, yeah, Cody's been playing. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like Nick would tell you, Coach Gazer would tell you, you know, Dutenheffer does such a good job at just, gosh, playing his role and doing his job. But Cody does provide you a little bit of punch as far as some playmaking and some things in the backfield. You know, if Cody continues to improve just fundamentally and being great with his pad level and things like that, he's really got a chance to be a really good player. And then as far as Enoch goes, I think Enoch, that's what we need out of him is when he gets opportunities for those flash plays, he needs to show up because he is capable of that. And so I like the combination of Enoch, Benson, if we get healthy at linebacker again with, you know, with Kubitz playing a little bit of Sam. You know, there's a lot of guys now that all of a sudden have played some reps and that we got things to leverage.
Structure of UND's run game, sort of similar to Illinois State. I mean, the kind of personnel they'll try to hit you with, the kind of scheme they'll try to hit you with.
I think it's really similar, right? Most people, there won't be many weeks we come in here and talk about that don't talk about 11 with a little mix of 12. That's just where the game's at. You know, it's primarily 11 personnel. Now, what they do a good job of is circulating in 2, 3, 4 tight ends in different roles, kind of like how we do.
Quarterback so far, obviously you mentioned that he is young, but you know when you have a young guy at quarterback who can make plays with his feet like that, kind of what do you do as far as it goes to contain him?
Yeah, you know, I thought I was going to be able to turn on the Iowa State game and get a little bit better feel. They really, you know, right now 3 teams in the Missouri Valley are averaging 34 minutes time of possession. You know, they're right behind us or whatever. Youngstown State's holding on the ball for 38 minutes a game. He seems to be doing a really good job of managing it. It doesn't seem like anything's been too big for him, but that's where the Dome comes in Saturday. You know, we need to make it really difficult on this young man and see if he can play through some adverse situations. You know, he's 55% roughly. You know, he has turned it over 5 times with some picks, but he's a capable runner. I don't have a feeling on him one way or the other, except for I know he's dangerous when he gets outside the pocket. And if we can take away his first read key, it'll be interesting to see how well he can respond and work through any kind of progressions that they do have.
How special is it for you to have this in-state rivalry back on a regular basis? You know, it was at different levels for a while, but for this to be a game that fans can look forward to every year.
Yeah, maybe it's the one thing I haven't really Gray's able, me and him had an interesting conversation because he probably would have liked me to be a little more enthusiastic in our Monday meeting. Imagine that, right? That's hard to do. But what I've learned over time, like at Iowa, I played in 4 trophy games a year. Holy smokes, if you don't stay pretty steady Eddie and stay true to who you are and how you want to operate, that can get away from you in a hurry. You know, and so Northern Iowa is a rival in my mind because they were so darn good in the early years. And they've been still good. You know, South Dakota State, when I came here in December and talked to the kids, you know, it was important for us to win the Dakotas, period. And now it's even more important because if you look at the top of the league, the Dakotas are involved in that. And so it's a big-ass game regardless of the year-to-year rivalry. But go tell former players that played in the D2 eras, you know, and go tell former players that it's not a big deal. It is a big-ass deal, and I respect it. But we have to make sure we leverage preparation and not hurry up and get to Saturday without doing the proper work.
On the Bronco deal, do you have to slow your rush down a little bit and kind of do the mush rush where you contain? Do you pressure a lot? I mean, how do you normally deal with a guy that might have a lower completion percentage but can beat you with his leg?
Yeah, 36 rushes for 146 yards. I'd say right now we're going to go try to get after him. Okay, and I think with any quarterback that's capable of moving at all, all right, I think it's really important that we don't pop gaps. We don't do something that's selfish. You know, we rush where we have to rush and we keep lane integrity. But hopefully, you know, it's not just one guy that's getting a good rush and the other 3 are getting beat up, because then that is a dangerous situation. We got to go. We're going to play with our hair on fire.
Tim, the switch at safety, when you looked at it now, was there anything that said, well, could we have done this earlier, that you've seen now production on the last game and a half?
Yeah, I'd probably say so. I wish I would have challenged the guys a little bit more. You know, fall camp's interesting, and then how you chart things and how you're evaluating success versus not success. And, you know, we chose to tackle more in the spring than we did in the fall. We've got to look at that hard. I think Ryan Jones had a good week of practice last week. He had a good night last night. Maybe just a lack of repetitions for him still at that strong safety spot, you know, showed up a little bit. We're not giving up on him, but Sam Young seemed to hit his fits pretty good last week. And that combination, along with getting Crumby back, is going to really open up not only some competition, but some doors for us as far as the combinations we can play.
Coach, we've heard a lot about how Rumpho's running ability, but the last couple of weeks he's been also throwing it deep. You know, what have you guys talked about with your, you know, backside of your defense to make sure not to bite on the play fake and let Belquist get wide open?
Yeah, well, they do a good job with double moves. I think what they do a nice job of is they're aware that if there's a game that they complete a bunch of hitches and stops, the next game they're going to put in, you know, the double move, the pumps and so forth. And so we have to be aware of that. And then a lot of their stuff, too, will come off of simple, not easy to defend, but simple bubble screens and then goes. And so we're going to have to be really disciplined on as far as if you're a secondary contained player, don't get too antsy. You know, if you're a force player, go. But if you're a secondary contained player, don't go until you know. I mean, that's just part of the deal. Bo's a tremendous player. You know, watching him in the punt return game and his ability to make tough catches, it's really impressive. He was a second-team all-conference performer last year, you know, in a league that had some good receivers last year. I think he's a really good player, and it'll just be a matter of, can we cloud the pitcher? Can we do something to make sure the pitcher's not exactly what the quarterback thinks it is post-snap?
Is Washington a kid where you might not stop or might start to not care about the red shirt?
Well, I don't care about the red shirt, period. I really don't, meaning that I always want to protect kids in the recruiting process as far as this, that, or the other. But in today's day and age, we're going to play the guys that can help us and get them up and running, and it's helpful to them. You know, because as education in the four-year schools continue too, kids are getting done in 4 years as well. You know, and grad school and all those things. I just don't give much thought to that. If they can help us, they got to get ready to go. And I can tell you by the way he practices and his approach, okay, is up there with some of the really good players that have played here. I really like him, and we just haven't got to that place yet. You know, last week we put him in there. So I think he's played in 2 games. And we'll continue to evaluate a couple different spots because special teams with some of these injuries is also getting a little thin.
About like wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. what does a guy like Joe Stuffle mean to the offense in your mind?
He's just been Johnny on the spot on a couple of these scramble situations. He's been right on his spot on time. He had the big catch early in the year. I can't remember what game. Ball was thrown behind him on a play action. Joe's been pretty solid, and I think the more we leverage that whole group, the better Joe will play. I think it's one of those deals where Joe's better if he plays 45 plays rather than 65. And so Joe's been really solid for us this year.
You lived Iowa, Iowa State, Wyoming, Colorado State, and you've experienced this. Where does this one rank with those other ones you've been in?
I mean, they're all kind of the same. Okay, now being a head coach for the first time in this role, I'm going to move this right up to the top. It's important to me. But just like all the Dakota games are critical, I have a great appreciation for in-state rivalries or border wars.
On those lines, you've been at these big, you mentioned that Simon didn't look like it's too big for him, but you played at Iowa State, but being at the Dome, when everyone's on top of you, from your experience, what's the difference like?
Yeah, the difference is no matter what, quote unquote, the big schools would say, they just don't respect the team as much as they should or whatever. So I'm sure that environment was tough, being the opening game. But this Dome right here, when it's rocking and rolling, these people are all on top of you, and the stage is what the stage is, and it's a Missouri Valley game. I mean, I think it's going to be a little different. I'm really challenging the community, and they've been awesome to me and to Jill. I'm really challenging Bison Nation to show up on this thing, starting on Thursday with the radio show. Show up Thursday on the radio show. Let's get this whole thing started, and let's sell a bunch of beverages, and let's get the tailgating early, and let's really, really show up. Bison Nation is going to take every one of us to perform the way we want to perform.
Should they bring the nickel trophy back?
Yes, but they should bring some form of a trophy back, and I've never had that discussion. Probably one of the few with my boss. But I like all that stuff. I mean, people don't realize it, but at Wyoming we had a rivalry. We had a rifle thing we played for at Utah State. We had another trophy with Hawaii. Those two weren't as big a deal as the boot. The bronze boot was a big deal. And then, like I said, all the Iowa games, the Floyd of Rosedale, the Husker thing, Hy-Vee game, it was awesome. I'll take a couple more if you got them, guys.
See Cole Payton break one off this last week?
Yeah. It was really his first opportunity to do it. Cole Payton is a tremendous kid. He's doing a good job for us. He's playing his role. We'll continue to leverage him the best way we can. We had him out there on 3 passes last week. It just didn't go to him. Again, you got to predict a lot of things, and Cam found completions on those plays, so it was good. But it's just exciting to see him continue to move forward and his ability. I think he hit 20 miles per hour on that run, so it was good.
Coach, your thoughts on Sam Darnold?
Jeez. Well, Sam Darnold. But I only got to watch like the last 6 or not watch it, but I had it on the background for 6 or 7 minutes, and they must have jumped all over him. The players all let me know the Vikings won. It's a long season. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
That was head coach Tim Polasek of North Dakota State Bison football. Big game coming up at the Fargodome. That's this Saturday, taking on North Dakota. Eric Moon and Devin Fry providing preview coverage, and make sure you tune in Friday night for the full breakdown of that matchup. Team in Sports is doing a great job breaking down every single matchup, but especially in a rivalry weekend. They have a lot of things planned, a lot of good things to look forward to in that coverage. Thank you so much for tuning in on Valley News Now. We'll see you next time.